Y News with Angelo Castro III and William Theo.
Good evening. For the third quarter of the year, the Philippines remains the second fastest growing economy in Asia. Here's why from Ray Pelayo.
The Philippines recorded a 6.9% growth in its gross domestic product or GDP in the third quarter of 2017. It is 0.2% higher than that of recorded in the second quarter of this year. However, it is lower by 0.2% compared to the third quarter of 2016. The gross domestic product or GDP is the measure of the entire value of goods and services produced and distributed by a country. According to Undersecretary Lisa Grace Bersales of the Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA, the services and industry sectors have the highest recorded growth this period.
Ito yung mga manufacturing, yung mga paggawa ng iba't ibang produkto dito sa loob ng Pilipinas. So siya talaga yung tumulong sa paglakas ng ekonomiya.
Bersales says the agriculture sector also contributes to the growth of the Philippine economy. However, its performance slowed down by 3.8%, which is lower than the recorded growth in second quarter. The PSA official explains the drop is due to the slow production of fish and corn in the country.
Kasi parang baka dumami yung supply nila sa fishing, kaya slow down muna sila para hindi masyadong bumaba yung presyo.
According to Socio-Economic Secretary Ernesto Pernia, the Philippines economy remains robust. The country has in fact maintained its status as the second fastest growing economy in Asia. Vietnam is the fastest growing economy, China is third, followed by Indonesia.
The figures we have here before you show that the country's economic activities remain robust.
The NEDA chief, however, notes the incoming typhoons and the rise in the prices of oil might hamper the growth of the Philippine economy. Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Pasig City.
Chinese Prime Minister Li has left the country following his bilateral meeting with President Duterte. The Chinese premier leaves with a positive outlook that China and the Philippines will work together to further strengthen ties in the future. Leslie Longboen will tell us why.
Chinese Premier Li Keqiang was given full military honors before he left the country this morning. Li was the representative of China in the ASEAN Summit and East Asia Summit held in the Philippines. Apart from attending the summits, the Chinese leader stayed in the country for a bilateral meeting with President Rodrigo Duterte. 14 agreements were signed by Li and President Duterte that will strengthen the cooperation of the two countries when it comes to economy, building infrastructures, fighting terrorism and illegal drugs, defense industry, and other sectors. A ceremonial launching was also held for the two bridges to be built by China in Makati and Manila, as well as a donation of the Drug Abuse Treatment Rehabilitation Center in Sarangani and Agusan del Sur. Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano describes the project as symbolic.
It takes two to tango eh. Whether mag-away, magkasundo, at least two kayo. And then bridges really means friendship eh. So itong I think sinadya talaga na dalawang bridge, tapos bridge talaga yung project.
The Secretary adds stronger ties between the two countries in the future is expected.
In the past few years, we highlighted disputes and our differences. But in the last year and in the coming years, we will deal with our differences as gentlemen, as neighbors, but we will focus on our friendship and on the other aspects of our relationship to further grow our relationship.
Premier Li said yesterday the good relationship of the Philippines and China will continue.
My suggestion is that our two sides may sit down together to discuss and formulate cooperation plans in these areas lasting for the next 5 or even to 10 years to take forward our cooperation in these specific fields, to send out a message to people of the two countries as well as the international community that China-Philippine relationship will continuously go forward and the people-to-people friendship between us will be further strengthened.
Li is the first Chinese premier who visited the Philippines in 10 years. Leslie Lomowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
The relationship between the Philippines and the U.S. seems to be going back to normal. Here's why from Joanano.
The Philippines and the United States have strengthened their 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty after the ASEAN Summit. This is why the previously cold relationship between the two countries is now warming, based on the statement of U.S. President Donald Trump.
If you speak to the admirals and you speak to the generals, that's a perfect spot. And as you know, we had no relationship for a long period of time in the Philippines, and now we have a very good relationship there. We're back with the Philippines.
With this, the U.S. President vows to help in the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines. According to AFP Public Affairs Office Chief Colonel Edgar Arevalo, it is a good indication for the shoulder-to-shoulder exercises of the two countries.
Hinggil sa naging komento ng Presidente ng Amerika, natutuwa tayo that they see the Philippines, and indeed the Philippines is an important partner. Ang ating nakikita ay nagwa-warm, kumbaga buhat sa sining panglalamig or nakikita or impression ng iba na tila bumaba ang bilang or ang extent or magnitude ng mga training.
Arevalo says included in the Balikatan exercises is the focus on countering violent extremism, countering terrorism, and how to provide humanitarian assistance and disaster response. He says it is also important for the Philippines to befriend not just America but also other countries to fight off terrorism.
Ang ma-highlight natin sa international scene ay kung gaano kahalaga na kasundo natin, kaibigan natin ang iba't ibang bansa sa ating rehiyon at maging ibang bansa sa buong mundo upang maipakita natin sapagkat higit sa lahat at tamang sabihin natin na ang terorismo ay laban ng mundo. Ito ay problema o suliraning hinaharap ng buong daigdig.
Now that the relationship of the Philippines with the U.S. is warming, militant groups are opposing this. They note the U.S. will only drag the Philippines into war.
More than economically, ang tingin ng Amerika sa Pilipinas is prime real estate for its military purpose. No? So ito yung nakakapangamba dahil in the coming years we will see again the active military positioning of the US here using the Philippines as its staging grounds sa kanyang mga hegemonic wars in the Asia Pacific, no? Starting off with itong sa North Korea.
The Philippines is located in the Pacific Ocean near Vietnam, China, and North Korea, and the line between the Philippines and Vietnam is the Subic Bay. This is because of the huge role of the U.S. military bases here during the Vietnam War. These bases serve as the refueling station of U.S. fighter jets. Also docked here is the 7th Fleet Armada of the America. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
U.S. President Donald Trump brags of his five-nation Asia tour, claiming U.S. has regained its position in the world. Here's why from James Montuyan.
In a televised speech, U.S. President Donald Trump brags of his five-nation Asia tour as a tremendous success, claiming America is back as a global leader.
The days of the United States being taken advantage of are over. Other countries treat America with the respect that our country so richly deserves.
Trump returned on Tuesday night from a tour that took him to Japan, South Korea, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. The president claimed to have won agreement from countries in the region to exert maximum pressure on North Korea in its development of nuclear weapons in defiance of UN sanctions. He also mentions of other accomplishments that resulted from his meeting with ASEAN and other partner countries, such as paving the way for a free and open Indo-Pacific, and insisted on free and reciprocal trade relations with the Pacific Rim.
At ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, we made it clear that no one owns the ocean. Freedom of navigation and overflight are critical to the security and prosperity of all nations.
On his trip to the Philippines, Trump vows to deepen the U.S. ties with the Philippines and preserve the long-standing alliance and following rift from his predecessor, citing the U.S. help during the war in Marawi City.
During our visit, President Duarte of the Philippines thanked the American people and our armed forces for supporting the recent liberation of Marawi from ISIS.
James Bontuyan, UNTV News and Rescue, USA.
Meanwhile, Makabayan congressmen are not satisfied with the result of the recently concluded Association of Southeast Asian Nation or ASEAN Summit, saying ordinary people will not benefit from it. Grace Casin will tell us why.
Makabayan congressmen criticized the outcome of the ASEAN Summit. They claim that President Rodrigo Duterte seems to have sold the Philippines to first world countries like US and China.
Sa lahat ng mga ipinagmalaking mga kasunduan ay very wanting, no, doon sa ano ba ang magiging kabuluhan nito, halimbawa para sa mga ordinaryong mamamayan, sa ating mga magsasaka, sa ating mga manggagawa, yung pagraratsada pa rin, no, nung economic policies, mga neoliberal economic policies that will favor in the end still the big countries like the US, China.
They also argued that none of the priority issues that Mr. Duterte had been bragging out had been tackled during the summit.
So wala man lang siyang banggit. Halimbawa, yung pinagmamalaki niya noon na independent foreign policy, hindi man lang ito nabanggit. Yung kanyang binanggit sa SONA na pagbalik ng Balangiga Bells, hindi man lang yata yun na napag-usapan.
In defense, Malacanang has this to say.
I beg to disagree, and obviously the opposition leaders who said this did not take time out to read the official accounts of how the summit went through. No?
Malacanang said Filipinos have a lot to gain from the ASEAN Summit. These include the benefits from the agreement on migrant workers, the aid for Marawi rehabilitation, improvements in the economy through free trade agreement, and the Canada's action to the trash issue.
It was a tremendous success.
Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, House of Representatives.
The Philippine National Police Region 7 will deploy over 3,000 cops to the province of Bohol in the last week of November. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
200 delegates from across the country are expected to attend the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights and other ASEAN-related meetings in Bohol from November 26 to 30. With this, the Police Regional Office 7, in cooperation with other concerned agencies in the region, is preparing for a successful conduct of the meetings. Today, interagency coordination meeting was held to discuss the necessary security measures for the events.
This interagency meeting will be laying out what is the required security money. We will base this on the number of the delegates that will be attending.
According to Police Regional Office 7 Director Chief Superintendent Jose Mario Espino, more than 3,000 policemen will be deployed to ensure and maintain peace and order.
We have already this major event security framework for ASEAN meetings. So, ito yung sinusundan natin. So, hindi tayo nag-downgrade dyan. So, if it is sanctioned by the NOC, the National Organizing Committee of ASEAN, we will provide the appropriate security personnel.
Espino adds the police have not received any reports of security threats relative to the meetings. Rajel Adora, UNTV News Rescue, Philippines.
A lawmaker seeks to name after Dr. Charlie Handic a proposed law in Congress which seeks to provide emergency medical services system in every city. Grace Casin will tell us why.
Kabayan Party List Representative Ron Salo pushes to name after Dr. Charlie Handic his proposed law called the Emergency Medical Services System Bill. This is after Dr. Handic's fast action and providing of first aid to the 24-year-old Angeline Fernando. Because of this, the severed arm of 24-year-old has been reattached. It can be recalled that Fernando's arm was cut off after she fell on the gap of the train cars.
Pangyaring ito na ipakita na ipamalas ni Charlie Handic yung kanyang heroism. At the same time, nagbibigay sa atin ito ngayon ng paalala na kailangan na nga natin na magkaroon ng isang batas na mag-institutionalize yung pangangailangan ng bawat sa atin nung emergency, sa mga panahon ng emergencies, marunong yung mga departamento natin.
According to the lawmaker, Dr. Handick's action is a good move. His proposed law mandates the installation of permanent emergency responders in each city. Once it has been passed into law, there will be a national universal emergency number that would provide the public an emergency medical services.
Doon sa LGUs, mandated na po sila na magkaroon sila ng unit doon sa kanilang doon sa bawat cities and bawat provinces, may specific unit sila na magre-respond whenever there are emergencies.
Meanwhile, Dr. Charlie Handicks has this to say.
Flattered po ako, pero personally po, hindi naman po talaga kailangan pangalan sa akin. Kasi po, ginawa ko lang naman po yung dapat gawin ng time na yon.
Dr. Handicks says it is high time that people learn basic first aid, since anytime an accident or disaster might happen.
As long as you know the basics of first aid, pwede ka namang tumulong. You don't need a degree to do that. As long as you keep calm, you have the presence of mind.
Grace Cassid, UNTV News and Rescue, House of Representatives.
The MRT management remains blank about what went wrong this morning when one of its coaches detached from the main train. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
In a Facebook post of Ivan Villegas, passengers are seen walking on track from Ayala to Buendia stations after MRT train detaches. The MRT management is now investigating as to what caused the detachment. According to Director Michael Bahati of MRT3, it is normal for the train to automatically shut down, especially if it detects problems in its coaches. However, this did not happen this morning.
Lahat ho ng anggulo ay pagsisikapan nating tingnan para masiguro ho natin kung ano talaga ang tunay na pangyayari.
Roel Jose of the MRT Technical Division. It was in 2011 when the same incident happened in the train, and the cause was a fault in its electrical system. But this time, they couldn't see any electrical or mechanical fault that could lead to the coach's decoupling.
It pertains sa human intervention. So yun ang tinitingnan namin.
For his part, the train driver explains that it was only when he reached Buendia station when he noticed that one of the coaches was detached.
In-advise po ako ng control na secure yung tren. Ang ginawa ko po, bumalik po ako nun sa naiwang car. Salamat naman po yung mga pasahero po ron, educated, di po sila nagpanik. Nandun pa rin po sila sa loob ng tren.
No one among the passengers on board the detached coach was injured. The train had completed 3 round trips before the incident. Despite this, the train management assures the public that the MRT trains are safe to board.
Definitely still safe, no? Lahat ho ng components natin sa bagon ay installed. Yan po ay napaka-safe na sasakyan.
Rajel Adora, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Senator Grace Poe calls on the Department of Transportation to consider a temporary halt on the services of MRT trains. Here's why from Nel Maribohok.
The Department of Transportation is being pressed to make an urgent decision to bring the MRT Line 3 into its favorable state. Senate Committee on Public Services Chairperson Senator Grace Poe believes the train service is in bad need of technical inspection and repair due to a series of glitches and the recent accident involving its trains.
So siguro, kinakailangan talaga may eksperto na itaya ang kanyang pangalan at busisiin mabuti at sabihan kung ititigil o itutuloy ang serbisyo dito. Pero ang DOTR, kailangan na nilang maglahad ng kanilang plano. Anong gagawin pag ititigil ito? Gaano kabilis ang rehabilitasyon kung sakasakaling ititigil? 1 buwan ba? Ilang buwan? Ilang linggo?
The latest was when a woman lost her arm after her arm was stuck in between coaches on Tuesday. Another one was this morning when the last coach of the train was detached while on track between Buendia and Ayala stations. Senator Po says DOTR should speed up its actions to immediately solve such recurring problems.
Kung kinakailangang emergency release of funds para maayos agad yan, kung kinakailangan kumuha ng eksperto mula sa ibang bansa para pag-aralan at busisiin ang kaligtasan ng ating mga kababayan dyan, gawin na nila.
The MRT management meanwhile said it is now applying some mitigating measures to solve the problems.
Actually, ang simula ho niyan, alas 4:30. Meron ho yung unang train na babaybay sa tracks natin para ma-check kung merong mga interference, debris, etc. After that, alas 5, magsisimula na ho from top and north ang revenue line natin. Ibig sabihin ng revenue line, nagsasakay na tayo ng pasahero. So mula ho alas 5, alas 5:30 na ho. So makakatipid tayo dyan ng another 30 minutes na gagamitin natin sa pag-maintain at evaluate ang trend. Ang closing po natin will be moved from 11 p.m. to 10:30.
But for the riding passengers,
hindi po. Kasi araw-araw sa MRT ako sumasakay, malaking tulong po. Sa Muntinlupa pa po, Alabang. Kasi malaking tulong siya, mahirap sumakay ng bus kapag walang MRT. Kulang yung mga bus kung mawawala yung MRT.
Pwede. Para kung ano naman, kung sa ikagaganda naman yan, di ba? Kung palagi na lang ganyan, palagi na lang sira, parang di ba? Wala naman kami magagawa, mga mamamayan lang kami. So, sunod na lang kami sa mga gobyerno. Kasi lagi na lang palpak Kanina, pag namin sa top, bago pumunta ng show, kailangan bababa ulit. Tapos pagdating ng show, saka ulit ng andar. Di parang ang laki naman ng abala.
Nel Maribhok, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
The Philippine Embassy addressed some concerns of overseas Filipino workers in Singapore during an OFW forum. Mary Jo Maleriado tells us why.
In cooperation with members Church of God International and UNTV, the Philippine Embassy was able to serve our Filipino workers and provided with answers and solutions regarding their concerns living and working here in Singapore.
The said forum was held in the facility of the MCGI. The conduct of the forum had been orderly with the help of the volunteers who assisted the Filipino attendees. The embassy explains the rights and privileges of Filipino workers in the country, especially the household workers.
Yung sa verification ng contracts po natin, reminder lang po, lalo-lalo na po sa ating mga household service workers or yung mga domestic workers, kahit na po ay nandito na po, na ilang taon na po kayo rito, ini-encourage po namin kayo na i-renew po yung contract nyo through verification sa embassy. It would be to your advantage if you renew.
Philippine Embassy representatives also discussed the need for the OFWs to have social security systems and bank accounts. They explained this would help ensure that their money goes safe to their families in the Philippines.
Napakalaking tulong nitong forum na to na ginanap dito sa Singapore. Una, para malaman ng mga OFW kung ano ba yung mga benefits na makukuha nila sa SSS. At the same time, yung OWA member na after 2 years pala expired na yun, which is yung karamihang mga OFW. Akala nila automatic na for life yung membership nila, which is mali pala.
Nagtanong po kasi ako kanina kung paano mag-register online ng account. Kasi kanina nagtatry ako, hindi successful yung registration ko kasi dapat daw active muna yung account mo. Matagal na din akong hindi nakapag-contribute.
According to the representative of the embassy, the forum is an opportunity for them to teach Filipino workers how to maintain good relationship with their employers and how to live peacefully in the said country.
This will no doubt be a very potent tool for OFWs to be able to learn what are their rights and their responsibilities as workers, as well as learn the do's and don'ts that are necessary to be able to have a very harmonious relationship with their employers.
Nagpapasalamat po ako sa Church of God International for having us here. It's an honor and privilege to be part of this event. Umasa po kayo na handa kaming tumulong sa abot na aming makakaya upang matulungan natin at mapagaan ang mga problema ng ating mga kababayan dito sa Singapore.
Medyo Malariado for Serbisyong Kasangbahay.
Next on Y News. The Senate of the Philippines targets the passage of the 2018 national budget and the tax reform package before December this year.
And Southeast Asian Coast Guards conclude maritime law enforcement training today.
Y News will be right back. The ASEAN 2017 Chairman's Statement is now published on the ASEAN website. The statement notes the importance of the formation of a code of conduct in the South China Sea in order to maintain peace and freedom of navigation in the area. But UP professor and Institute for Maritime Affairs and Law of the Sea Director Attorney J. Batong Bakal notices that the current chairman's statement evades the issue of maritime dispute with China. Batong Bakal adds that the statement implies that China has achieved its goals over the disputed waters.
Malaking advantage ito sa China dahil una, kumbaga yung nais nilang mangyari dito sa South China Sea na manahimik na lang ang mga disputing parties at ang lahat ng partido ay pumasok na lang sa bilateral negotiation at lahat ng diskusyon tungkol sa disputes nila ay doon na lang sa bilateral sila daan. Bali nakamit niya yung gusto niyang resulta.
Meanwhile, UP political science professor Clarita Santos said that the government is pragmatic on dealing with the issue instead of confronting China. She adds that implementing the code of conduct will be more difficult as compared to forming it. Carlos thinks that a fish agreement is much better than the COC.
Mas mabuti siguro ay imbis na code of conduct, fish disagreement na lang. Total, ang pinag-aawayan talaga natin is hindi naman yung
In other news, the Senate is expediting the passage of the proposed 2018 national budget and the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion bill of the Duterte administration. Nel Maribuhok will tell us why.
The Senate went straight on deliberation of priority bills of the Duterte administration as soon as the session opened today. The upper chamber of Congress targets to finish its deliberations on the proposed 3.7 trillion peso 2018 national budget before the December. This despite delay in the opening of session supposedly on November 13 to give way to the conduct of the ASEAN summit. Senate Majority Leader Vicente Soto III is confident that they will be able to pass the budget bill along with the proposed tax reform package of the administration before December 15.
The budget amendments will be taken up 2021 and possibly 22. If not, then 22-23, or if yes, 22-23 will be devoted to the amendments of the train. The tax reform package. The week after that, we can devote our time to the other bills pending. No, pero those are the two major pieces of legislation that we need to pass before the end of the year.
During the opening of this session today, the Senate first tackled the budget allocation to the Department of the Interior and Local Government and the Philippine National Police. The deliberation pressed on the Senate minority bloc's questioning of the administration's anti-illegal drug operation. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
The Philippine Coast Guard had a successful 9-day maritime law enforcement training with its Japanese and American counterparts. Here's why from Aiko Miguel.
Southeast Asian Coast Guards led by the Japanese Coast Guard exchange knowledge on maritime law enforcement. The 9-day training is part of the renewed defense and security cooperation agreement between Japan and the Philippines. It aimed to provide help for the effective operation of multi-role response vessels and high-speed boats brought by the Japanese government. Kentaro Sonora, the special advisor to the Prime Minister of Japan, also witnessed the conduct of vessel maneuvering and enforcement techniques earlier this morning at the headquarters of the Philippine Coast Guard or PCG.
Maintaining safety and security of the seas around Southeast Asia is extremely important, not only for each nation, but also all Asian countries and even for the world. In addition, I'd like to express my government's strong will to strengthen our effort to maintain and develop open and stable seas based on rules of law in cooperation and collaboration with all countries concerned.
The United States Coast Guard also participated in the activity by providing lectures on how to maintain the machines of small naval vessels. According to Commodore Joel Garcia, it's a huge help for them to cooperate with their international counterparts to learn strategies and enforcement techniques.
The presence of our security advisor from Japan symbolizes the strong support of the Japanese government, not only for the Philippine government, but of course to the whole ASEAN region in pursuit of peace, tranquility, security, and good order in the ASEAN seas.
Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also made good on his promise to send naval vessels to the Philippines. Japan already donated 7 rigid hull inflatable rubber boats to the Philippine Coast Guard.
The safety of life at sea. And so the Coast Guard comes in anywhere where we have our maritime domain. Kasama dyan ng West Philippine Sea at saka East Philippine Sea hanggang yung old Philippine Rice. Ang talagang papupuntahin natin dyan is Coast Guard.
The Vietnamese Coast Guard, Indonesian Maritime Security, and Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency also participated in the said training. The training began on the 7th of November and ended this afternoon, with the aim to strengthen the coast guards of the Asian countries in terms of addressing terrorism, piracy, armed robbery in waters of Southeast Asia. Participants who were able to finish the maritime training will become leaders and instructors of maritime law enforcement techniques. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
And a group of lawyers formally charged Senator Antonio Trillanes IV before the Pasay City Prosecutor's Office today. Here's why from Joanne Nano.
Pro-Duterte lawyers formally files complaints of inciting to sedition, proposal to commit coup d'etat, and violation to the Graft and Corruption Practices Act against Senator Antonio Trillanes IV before the Pasay City Prosecutor's Office. The allegations stem from the privileged speech of Senator Trillanes last October 3, where he questioned the alleged 2 billion peso hidden wealth of President Rodrigo Duterte. The complainants say it is a clear violation of the Article 142 of the Revised Penal Code. They argue the senator's speech incites anger against an official of the government. Also included in the complaint is the statement of Trillanes in connection with the soldiers' use of M60 machine guns against President Duterte, which the group of lawyers claim clearly encourages rebellion against the government.
Harapin mo issue. May bilyon-bilyon ka sa bangko. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, isa kang kurakot. At pag nakita yan ng sundalo, sabi ko nga talagang M60 machine gun ang abutin niya.
Pero ito, hindi lang minamalayan si Presidente, gusto niya patayin pa ng mga sundalo or bring down the government, which is, unbecoming of a senator.
The lawyers also filed complaints of graft against the senator for his alleged repeated accusations if president has a questionable hidden wealth. They argue it may cause negative implications to the Philippine economy.
That causes undue injury not only to the president but also to the Anti-Money Laundering Council. Kasi ito ang nagbabantay ng ating securities, bank industry, and also contributes to the protection of the economy. Pag sinasabi niya na mayroong presidenteng ganun, anong mangyayari? Investors will no longer trust in the banking system. There may be capital flight.
Meanwhile, in a statement, Senator Antonio Trillanes stands by his position. He says he will never be affected by the detraction against him and instead vows to continue revealing the corruption of the president. Particular of this is what he claims as the secret bank account of the president and the involvement of his son Davao City Vice Mayor Paulo Duterte in the 6.4 billion peso shabu shipment in the Bureau of Customs. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
The prosecution will use former Bucor officer in charge Rafael Ragos as a witness against Senator Laila De Lima. DOJ has dropped Ragos as a co-accused in the drug trading case filed against the lady senator. Roderick Mendoza will tell us why.
The Department of Justice has dropped former Bucor officer in charge Rafael Ragos as a co-accused of Senator Laila De Lima. Only Ronnie Dayan will remain as De Lima's co-accused should the amended information gain the approval of Judge Juanita Guerrero of the Muntinlupa Regional Trial Court, Branch 204.
We dropped Ragos as one of the accused under regional information, and he will be utilized as an ordinary prosecution witness.
As a former Bucor OIC, Ragos allegedly delivered to De Lima 5 million pesos from inmate Peter Co as proceeds of the illegal drug trade. Ragos was already admitted to the Witness Protection Program and is currently under the custody of the NBI. The DOJ has amended the cases against De Lima from the original charge of illegal drug trading to mere conspiracy to commit drug trading. The prosecution panel explains this was done to make the charges clearer. They said the penalty for the offense is the same, which is life imprisonment.
There is no such amendment as far as the theory of the case is concerned. And the evidence that will be presented by the prosecution under the original information will also be the same evidence to be presented under the amended information.
Judge Guerrero has given De Lima's lawyers 10 days to submit their opposition.
Na ang pagka-file ng motion to amend ay pagkapatunay lang talaga na wala at peke yung mga ebidensya kay Senator De Lima. Ito'y pinapakita na kahit ang siguro ang prosecution nalilito na rin kung anong gusto nila isampa kay Senator De Lima.
For Senator De Lima, this only proves that it is not clear even with the DOJ what case to file against her.
Hindi pa rin talaga alam ano ba talaga yung akusasyon nila sa akin kasi kung yung Supreme Court mismo ay they cannot also agree on the true charge whether it's drug trading or conspiracy to trade drugs. Di ibig sabihin illegal yung pagkaka-aresto sa akin sa pag-detain kasi hindi nga klarado, hindi nga nila alam kung ano mismo ang akusasyon ko.
The court deferred De Lima's arraignment until January next year as it has yet to rule whether or not to grant the amended information. Meanwhile, De Lima wants Judge Guerrero to inhibit from her case. Her lawyer says they doubt the judge's integrity in acting on their motions.
Meron pa kaming pending motion to quash, sinet niya for arraignment. Meron pang pending motion for reconsideration, itinutuloy niya na yung kaso. Ang pakiramdam ni Senator De Lima, hindi siya magkakaroon ng tama at patas na paglilitis sa korte niya, kaya pinapa-inhibit na lang namin siya.
Roderick Mendoza, UNTV, News and Rescue, Muntinlupa City.
Actress and former beauty queen Maria Isabel Lopez has asked the Land Transportation Office not to cancel her driver's license following her controversial violation. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
Once again, I'm apologizing to the people I have inconvenienced, yung public, those people who missed their flights, na it was a lapse of judgment in my part.
Actress and former beauty queen Maria Isabel Lopez humbled herself and apologized for the breach of security protocol she committed when she illegally used the lane designated for the delegates and heads of state of Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN. With her lawyer, Lopez faced earlier the Land Transportation Office or LTO after she was summoned and issued with a show cause order last Monday. The Metro Manila Development Authority or MMDA seeks to suspend or cancel the license of the actress for violating the security protocol authorities implemented during the ASEAN Summit. The actress says she is ready to accept the punishment and fines the agency will impose on her, but pleaded to not revoke her license to drive.
sana naman wala pa naman akong driving violation or traffic violation sa driver's license ko. Sana lang kung ano man yung penalty na ipapataw sa akin, bigyan nyo naman ako ng konting senior citizen discount.
The former beauty queen says she regrets what she did and notes she should have waited in the heavy traffic. Francis Ray Almora, the director of the Law Enforcement Service of LTO, orders Lopez to submit a written explanation on the incident before releasing a decision on whether or not to suspend or cancel her license.
Determine po natin kung si Ms. Lopez ay proper person to hold a license or to drive a motor vehicle consistent po yun sa Republic Act 4136.
Rajal Adora, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The drivers of the vans used by the new People's Army to kidnap 2 policemen in Placer, Surigao del Norte are now facing charges. Abby Santa Ines will tell us why.
Authorities filed charges of slight illegal detention against the drivers of the vans used by the new People's Army or NPA in abducting PO2 Alfredo de Gamon Jr. and PO2 John Paul Duverte of the Placer Municipal Police Station last Monday. The driver was identified as Donald Pitogo and Benji Bising, who was also the owner of the said vans. According to PRO 13 spokesperson Police Chief Inspector Renel Serrano, the 2 were on Butuan Surigao route when they were approached by an unidentified man while their vehicle was parked on the Cabadbaran terminal. The van owner insisted they were not aware that the men who hired their vehicles are members of the MPA.
Pagkuman sa hot pursuit operation nga gihimo sa PNP, na-recover ang van, naaman sila. So sila ang gifailan og kasong kidnapping. Pero dili ni sila lang. Ital ni siya, ital. Including tong mga identified members sa Guerrilla Front 16.
The drivers are still in the custody of the Surigao del Norte Police Office and are said to be transferred to the provincial jail after 15 days based on the police protocol. The PNP reminds public utility vehicles or PUV drivers to be careful in choosing individuals who will rent their vehicles. Authorities tell them to determine the identities of their customers first to avoid being implicated in illegal activities. Meanwhile, the local government of Surigao del Norte gives 10,000 peso aid to each family of the abducted policemen. Abby Centenes, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Philippine National Police or PNP still implements a full alert status for the country. This is although the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN Summit has already ended. Monokson will tell us why.
The Philippine National Police or PNP reminds the public about the possible rise in the number of crimes as the holiday season draws near. That's why the PNP remains on full alert status even after the conduct of the Summit of World Leaders in the country.
So ang alam ng kriminal, maraming umiikot na cash. So they will have more activities, crime activities.
Based on the latest figures of the PNP, theft, robbery, and physical injury are among the most prevalent crimes they have recorded. The police also remind the public to take extra caution against the modus operandi of various criminal gangs. These gangs are the Salisi Gang, Best Friend Gang, Dura Boys, Las Bulsa Gang, and Laglag Barya Gang. The modus operandi of these gangs is to confuse their victims while the suspect is stealing their valuables. Some gangs also resort to violence and force, such as the Pitas Gang, Ipit Taxi Gang, and the Tutok Kalawit Gang. The PNP considers as crime hotspots urbanized areas or crowded places in the country. According to the PNP, crimes can be prevented through the spread of correct information to the public.
Ang ating pong intent is to still lower this number of theft incidents by empowering the public and having a police presence in areas kung saan nakikita na nagiging crime hotspots.
The PNP also encourages the public to avoid posting on social media their every activity. Authorities say this is one way for criminals to find an opportunity to steal from possible victims. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
The Department of Education can now fully implement the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
Health Secretary Francisco Duque III announced the resumption of distribution of free contraceptives in health centers, local government units, and in civil society organizations. This is after the Supreme Court lifted the temporary restraining order on family planning implants, and after the Food and Drug Administration certified the 51 contraceptives as non-abortifacient.
DOH has already started the distribution of the family planning commodities to our regional health offices, and therefore there has been a resumption of the provision of essential reproductive health services to Filipino women and their families.
With this, DOH prioritizes the distribution of 261,000 implants before their expiration in September next year. They are stored in the warehouses in Manila after the Supreme Court issued a TRO 2 years ago. According to Dr. Juan Antonio Perez III, this will be delivered to health centers in the next 2 weeks.
Now that the TRO is lifted, there should be, DOH should be able to buy all the products with CPR, Certificate of Product Registration. That allows the product to be marketed, to be sold to the public, but more importantly, to be sold to government.
FDA, meanwhile, is ready to publicize the resolution on the 51 contraceptives as non-abortifacient.
We are done with the 51 resolutions, which means, the 51 resolutions contain at length a discussion of their evaluation process. So each product will have a 7-page resolution. So we have that available already.
But for Senator Vicente Soto III, an oppositor of the RH law, DOH should wait for the formal lifting of the TRO by the Supreme Court before they distribute contraceptives. DOH has allotted 4.2 billion pesos for this year for the procurement of contraceptives. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
Coming up on Y News. Canada plans to spread its peacekeeping missions around the world by sending more lady peacekeepers.
And tourists beware as China installs tens of millions of cameras, making it an all-seeing surveillance state.
More from Y News after this break.
Bulacan's Bet leads the first batch of Wishful 12 in power views of Wish 107.5's Wish Covery. Leslie Longbowen will tell us why.
Power viewing for the first batch of Wishful 12 is only up to 12 noon tomorrow. As of 4 p.m. today, Bulacan's Louie Ann Culala is leading with 31,788 views. Kimberly Baluzo of Camarines Norte comes close with 30,705 views.
Ewan ko, bakit ba ganyan? Damdamin ay di maintindihan.
While John Harvey Magos of Rizal got 25,752 views.
At kung hindi man dumating sa akin ang panahon.
Unlike the past rounds, the power views for round 3 will comprise 15% of their total scores. It means that the comments of the resident reactors will be given greater weight with 85%. The first elimination of the Wishful 12 will be uploaded on the first YouTube channel of Wish 107.5 on Saturday at 9 p.m. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Those are the reasons behind the news. November 16, 2017. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am William Theo.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Thank you for watching Y News.